All right, guys. Here we have another episode of Making Furniture. I think it's quite nice to try to challenge ourselves to create something different. And I think the previous video was quite fun. So I thought we might do it again with a bit different furniture and some different commands that we can use, and a few new ones to learn as well. So again, this file with the images can be found in the description. You can download it to go along, but you can also just look at the video and try to recreate it yourself. So feel free to have a break in between each furniture to try it out yourself. And if for any reason something doesn't work, you can leave a comment down below. So let's begin with the first one. It's this really cool 60s, 70s coffee table with this kind of magazine spots and this bright orange color. Well, how will we start? It's always easy to think about the main shapes of an object and how we can find the correct order to make things. So here the most prominent shape is this circle. So let's go ahead and create a circle ourselves, like so. And there is also a circle on the inside. So we can do a simple Command C, Command V, Control C, Control V to copy this object. And now we're going to hold the Shift key and drag one of these gumballs to create this inside little piece. Perfect. And now we have to create these dips, which are also the feet. How would we do that? Well, maybe we can take a simple rectangle, just like this, and maybe do a copy once or twice. And let's find a good angle, like this. I'm gonna delete actually one of those. And I'm going to turn on my center, and we're gonna select the rectangle that is now in an angle and mirror this. This was a command we learned in the previous episode. And find a center of one of the circles and mirror that rectangle. Amazing. Well, this is looking quite interesting, but what we want to do now is select our objects here and do a trim command. So with the trim, we can actually get rid of these pieces that we don't really want, like so, and get rid of these extra bits here. Yes, so you can see how it's starting to resemble the previous shape. Of course, because we trimmed, nothing here is joined, so we can go ahead, select everything. Again, selecting from right to left, we'll select anything that the selection box is touching, and selecting from left to right, we'll select only the curves or the objects that are completely inside. So in this case, the right to left is a good one. Let's type the command join. Now we have 3 closed curves. And I think this is as much as we can do in the top view. So let's double click on the top viewport and go to perspective. So we can start thinking about things in 3D. So these are now only curves. What we can do is bring them up a little bit. Yeah, like this. We can do a planar SRF. Planar SRF was something we learned in the second video, which is quite some time ago, but it creates a surface out of closed curves. So we can start giving this table a flat surface. And the next thing is we need to create the legs going down from these curves here. Again, what we're going to do is extrude only these segments going down. And to select only these segments, you can hold Control Shift or Command Shift and then hover your mouse over the elements and you will be able to select one thing at a time. There's also a new command that we can learn called dupe edge. And basically what this does is you can click on edges that you want to duplicate, press enter, and they are now curves by themselves, which is exactly what we want because now we can extrude these using the gumball, or if I go ahead now have to. Um, I think in this case it's easier to select everything and then with holding Control or Command, deselect the objects that we don't want here. Yes, perfect. And we can also do an extrude CRV to bring down our curves to the bottom, like this. You can see it's really starting to resemble the table. And we need to bridge the gap here to find the missing piece of the feet. We could do that by doing a SRF PT, surface points, and then quickly close these guys, like so. And we repeat this. Perfect. Well, now we have a bunch of different surfaces and they're not connected. So we can just select everything and do a join command, which will give us one open poly surface. This is looking quite all right. And the one detail that is nice about this that gives it this kind of vintage 70s vibe is these filleted corners. So again, we can do fillet edge because this is a 3D shape, not a 2D curve. And we have to play around with the amounts here. So if we do 1, we are getting something like this, which is actually quite close to the original. Let's get rid of these curves. There we go. So because we try to fillet once, we can do a fillet edge again and go around and find all of the curves that we want to fillet, like this. We can do enter and confirm, and here we go. This looks amazing. So our table is exactly as we want. The only thing that is missing is now giving it a little bit of thickness because now this is infinitely thin. So by selecting the table and doing a offset SRF, we can see this very familiar view that we had in the last video. However, now the distance is, well, I think 0.2 could work. So maybe for you it's not 0.2. You can also try 0.3. Yeah, there we go. This looks amazing. I'm proud of myself, actually. This looks great. Yeah, so that's how you make this cool vintage coffee table. Feel free to take some time and try it out yourself, and let's pick up for the next one. So the next object we have is this really blocky chair, composed mainly of different rectangles. So let's try to do that ourselves. Let's start by creating a box, which could be our seat. I do think this is a bit too thick. So let's select it and do a scale 1D. Right now, this is 10 millimeters. Well, 10 millimeters is a bit too small. And perhaps this is a good time that I teach you how to change the units of Rhino. I've been using the millimeters preset, which is one of the options you can choose when you open Rhino for the first time. However, if we wanted to change it to centimeters, all we have to do is type units and it will open the properties menu. And then here we can change the model units to centimeters or to any other type of measurement that you want and press OK. Here it's going to ask me if I want to only change the unit system or if I want to change the unit system and maintain object sizes. So the difference is here it will transform everything that was 1 millimeter into 1 centimeter, and here it will keep the size of the objects and scale it to the right size. For now, we're just going to pick change unit system only, click OK. So now my seat here, if I do a scale 1D, and I look here at the bottom of my screen, where it used to be 10 millimeters, it is now 10 centimeters, which is, I think, a little bit better. So let's bring it down just a little bit. I showed you last time how to play around with the scale 1D. This is, I think, a bit too thin, 5, and because I have grid snap on, it is only locking to these multiples of 5. But I don't have to be restrained to that. I can actually just type with my keyboard a certain amount. So let's do 8. And I think that's exactly what I'm looking for. Amazing. I see that the seat is a bit higher, and it is actually also in a little bit of an angle like this. So we can just go ahead and using one of the arc handles and holding shift to bypass the ortho, or I can turn ortho myself, and I give it a little bit of an angle. Yeah, that's good. And I think it's also a little bit too high. So we have kind of our seat prepared. We also have to do this back rest, which we can do by copying this with the gumball. So to copy with the gumball, again, you hold Alt key or Option key on a Mac and drag one of these handles from the gumball. Now we have 2 of these objects, and I can again play around here with the arc and have a look at my object here. Okay, so it's not going to the bottom part of the seat, but it is actually shorter than the seat itself. So we can scale it a little bit like this, and maybe also a little bit like this. Yeah, something like this looks good. I think that's pretty accurate. And the next thing we need to do is create these legs. So I'm going to turn on the grid snap for now. I do see that my grid is snapping every 10 centimeters, which is bothering me a little bit. So let's change that by going to grid and changing the snap spacing to 1. Let's enter. So now if I try to make here my box, you can see that my snapping is much more precise. So let's do something more on the feeling like this. I think that looks quite okay. Let's move it over here and a little bit like this. Is that correct? No, that's not correct. It's completely inside of the chair. And I also see that it is tilted a little bit more than the chair actually. So let's bring it down. Yeah, that is looking pretty close. And we need to do the same again, holding Alt Option, dragging with the gumball, flip it, bring it back. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, if I say so myself. So we have one side. Let's have a try with the mirror command that we learned last class. Mirror, finding the middle of my chair, clicking, and then I can play around until I find the correct placement. There we go. Yeah, this looks quite all right. And the only thing here is this bottom part of the feet are cut from below. And here I have these nice and sharp angles, which is not exactly what's supposed to be happening. So I'm going to move my whole chair a little bit towards the top. Yeah, I move these two a little bit down. Yeah, like so. And how would we do this? We could try to select one of these edges and then move this, but it's actually going to bring everything else with it. So that's not correct. A very simple trick we can do is create a big box here that is actually going to be at the ground level. We can look at a different viewport, turn on shaded, and we can see that it is going along the ground. And then now we can do a Boolean operation, Boolean difference. Select the shapes we are subtracting from, press enter, and then the solids we are subtracting with. Press enter, and there we go. Now we have the same kind of detail that is happening here with the legs. Awesome. The only thing is that this is all joined together and it has a little bit of a fluffy feeling, which here is very sharp. So we can do a Boolean union. Let's do that once. Select everything, press enter. Now this shape is one thing, which I can move it by itself. And we can do a fillet edge. Let's change the radius to be, let's go for 0.3. Select all my shapes, enter, enter. Yes, I think this is looking great. This is looking fantastic. So now we have a little bit of a softer edge to this chair. And just like that, we have another wonderful furniture piece. So again, have a little break, try it out yourself, and come back. All right, let's go on. Next is this very interesting corner sofa chair for, I think this is a fake cat, but let's pretend it's real. So this main shape is composed of this interesting curve profile here, which perhaps we can try to recreate first. So let's use a little bit of math this time. So let's create here a square. This is 10 by 10. And let's create another square connecting the middle points to have this happening here. And we need to create this completely round corners on these edges of the square. So here we want to create this interesting arc shape. We can try to do that by going to the circle here and doing a diameter circle. I'm doing something like center is always messing with me. I'm doing something like this. Yeah. And then we can select both of these and do a trim and get rid of these corners here and this one. Yeah, that looks quite okay. We can also try to do here. Maybe we can do that later. I thought I would do a fillet on this edge right here, but maybe we can do it later. First, let's just join these guys together. They are still two separate curves, but now we can select both of them together, flip them, and bring them up, something like this. And then how would we create this extrusion at an angle? If I select both of these and do the extrude curve, well, that works, and I can kind of do this in a straight line, which is interesting. Maybe I could even copy this one and somehow find a good spot for it here. But that's not creating this nice curved round back seat here. So what could be a solution? There's a new command that I'm going to teach you that is called sweep. So for sweep 1, we need the sweep shapes, which we already created, and we need the rail line. And for the rail line, we are going to draw the kind of route that the sweep shapes will do to give the final result. So we can do something as simple as something like this. So a basic line, and we can do a big fillet here in the middle to give it this interesting curvature. So I have now a radius of 10, let's maybe do 8, and select one side and the other side. And then you can see now we have the interesting fillet corner in the middle. So now let's type sweep 1, and let's go one at a time. So first we select our rail, which is this line, and then a sweep shape. So let's choose one first. First a square. Press enter. You can see this is a good sign. It is asking you what is the direction of the sweep. Let's leave it like this for now. Press enter. And there's a few options here that we don't have to really worry about. Press OK. And you can see we have the seat of our chair. And we can do the same. Again, now our sweep shape is kind of hidden here, but then we can select it again. Now our sweep shape. Press enter. The line is a good sign. Press enter. And OK. And here we go. We have an almost finished cat chair. The only thing we need to do now is, now we can do the fillet edge. And this we can try maybe 3. Click, click, click. Press enter. Yeah, that's looking quite okay. And finally, we can do a offset SRF select our two shapes, press enter, flip our direction, and then for the distance, I'm going to pick 1. There we go. That's looking quite okay. And finally, we can even try to do maybe a fillet edge on the inside. Let's be quite precise here. And let's change the radius to 1. And then we can click. But let's do it like this. And there you go. You can see now we have these nice, interesting corners. Great. I'm going to scale this down just a little bit because it's kind of getting in the way. Something like that. Feel free to have a break, try it out yourself. Next, we have this interesting, again, a little bit 60s vibes, shelving system. And it's composed of these elements, and this was a video that you can kind of twist and turn it to have this interesting modular design. So we can start by creating just simple unit, so something like this, and then we can fillet our corners. The radius now is, I think, too big. Now it's on 8. Let's try 3. Still too much. Let's try 2. Yes, that's quite okay. Yeah, looking good. They're already joined, so let's flip them to the side. And we can do a nice extrusion here. The only thing is now it's solid. So what we could do is hold Control Shift and select both of these outside surfaces and delete them so we can see the inside. And again, do a offset SRF. We can flip it to the inside, change the distance to 0.5. Press enter, and here we have one of these units already showing itself. Then we can see that the middle here is kind of alternating in this kind of zigzag pattern between a smaller unit and a longer unit. So how would we create the longer unit? Because if I duplicate my shelving here and I use this, you can see that I'm actually stretching the thickness of the shelf itself. That rhymes. But this is giving us a bad result because we want to keep the proportions as they are. So how could we solve this? When we have a solid, we usually don't see the control points, unlike what we do see in a kind of a curve. So when I select a curve, I can see my original control points that I can move and change them around. But I cannot really see that when I click on a solid. You can force them to come up by typing solidpton on. I'll put that on the screen. And you can now see that I have my control points available in the solid, which means I can select one by one and actually make changes to the solid that were not possible before without the points being on. So how does that help us? Well, let's do a solid PT on in this shape. And you can see now that I can select only one half. So if I would select like this, I would select the whole thing from right to left, but I'm selecting from left to right to only pick the solid points on this side. And then I can drag this with the gumball to create the longer shelf unit. And if I want the points to go away, I can press escape and they will be turned off. Awesome. So now we can move this back into position, something like this. And we can make here the copy of a copy of a copy. And we can even try to do a mirror command like so to achieve this final result. However, I do see that there are these interesting holes going in, I guess, to create some rigidity or stability. Let's go back to our top view and we can think about finding here a spot. Maybe we find the middle and create here a circle, move it over. Let's go back into the perspective view. So our circle was created a little bit floating in midair. Let's move it back up. And there is also some elements. Oh, I lost it. So if you lose something in between other objects, you can always hide certain elements. So if I select this object, for example, and do hide, that's a new command, press enter, I will temporarily hide that object. And if I want to show it again, I can type show and it will come back. And now I need to see what is going on with my little shape here. Yeah, it's gonna have to be a little bit floating. What I could also do is do a move command to be precise and find here the middle and then move it over. Now it's precisely here on the surface. Well, now all we need to do is select this curve and extrude curve to go all the way down through my shape. Amazing. And if I look at my reference, this middle poles are just some kind of connection piece. So they are not actually going all the way through, they're just going to the two elements connecting each other. So here I can do an extrude curve and only go to the point below, and I can find a reference point by using the O snap that it's only going through these two shelf units. It could be, let's hide this. Yeah, so they are not solid yet because I didn't choose the correct option. I can select both and do a cap command, remember, one of my favorites, and show our shelving unit back. And now what could we do to give this a bit more detail? Well, we could, first of all, we need to copy this guy a few times so that it is going through all of the elements. And by selecting a box like this and the other pole, I can mirror all of this structure to the other side. Lovely. I'm not going to do this piece of the feet here. I think it's a bit too much for today, but what we can do is try to do a Boolean difference. Try it out. We want to delete the input, yes, but we don't want to delete the cutters. So the cutters in this case are our structure elements here. So let's select the pieces we want to subtract from. Perfect, press enter. And now we select our cutters, which are the structure elements, and we can just do it like that. Like so, press enter to confirm. Joshua, it looks exactly the same, yeah, but if we now hide this, you can see that I'm creating a kind of pseudo structure here where this pole would fit, and I could do the same by selecting these elements and doing hide as well. So you can see I'm creating now interesting details that bring this furniture to life. Let's show it back up. And we want to try and create this interesting effect here where one of the pieces are turning. So if you remember, we can maybe turn on center for this and start our rotate command. Let's select all of the objects that we want to rotate. Press enter, and now we need to find the center of the rotation, which we can pick this one, and we can find another center here. And because we are picking the right point of rotation, I can have this really nice rotation action here. Awesome. That looks awesome. Yeah, if you managed to do it, I'm really proud. This looks great. I would have this in my house for sure. Awesome. Okay. The video is getting quite long, so let's go to the last one. Again, if you want to pause and try it out yourself, no problem. So the last that we have here is this interesting kind of decor piece to hold some, yeah, I don't know, memorabilia. The interesting part of this furniture is this really cool cutout here happening in the middle. So how would we do that? There's many ways. You can probably achieve this with a wire cut or a boolean. I'm going to try to do it in a quite simple way. I'm going to draw a kind of a primitive version of this in 2D, like so. I have a polyline, and I'm going to try to fillet this now with maybe a radius of 10. Yeah, that looks quite okay. Let's do the same here. And if you notice in this furniture, this line is exactly the same as this one. So let's just copy it one more time. And now we need to start creating our structure of this piece. So let's use this square as an example. Let's flip both of these guys up. So let's move this. Currently my object is not really snapping, so let's turn on near so I can snap to my line. Here looks okay. Let's do the same here. I'm going to do in this corner. I'm going to flip it once, move it again, like this. Now all we need to do is select this and copy it to the top. Perfect. Yeah, that's looking quite okay. And we can planar SRF this, planar SRF that. We can do something like this. Surface points to close the backside here. Yeah, that's looking quite fantastic. But now we reach this point. How are we going to close this? Well, simple. Let's draw an extra polyline that closes this shape, and I can select this polyline and join them together. Because the lines are all parallel, I can actually do a planar surface on this guy, and I can do the same on the other side. So let's do again this, 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 and this. Select both of the curves, join, and planar surface. Amazing. This is looking fantastic. I noticed that here on the top there's kind of a lip, so we can actually choose our existing curve here at the top and then do an extrude curve. Let's not make it solid, and let's just bring it down without near to something like that. Great. That's looking awesome. And now again, let's bring it up because I see here in my reference there's a little bit of a plateau here and then the feet. So if we want to do that, we can maybe do this for the plateau. Because I'm using the gumball, it's already solid, and I can just copy this down and scale it a little bit, like so, to create the feet. Great. And now I want to make this into its own shape, so we need to do a final boolean. But because these top shapes are not solid, what we need to do now is offset SRF all of these shapes here. So the back side, the two interesting shapes that we made, the top, and these sides. Press enter. Now we need to be careful and make sure that we are doing all of our offset SRFs in the same direction. I can see that they're all going to the inside. I see that my distance is 0.5, that's quite alright. Let's press enter, and now they are all solids, but they are still all separated. So we can do maybe one final Boolean union and select our shapes. We can maybe do one big drag, press enter, and there we go. Wow, this looks amazing. We can do another Boolean and select the bottom to create our final shape. Awesome. You can see that if I drag now my shape away, I have one single elegant piece of furniture and my reference lines that I used in the beginning. So this looks great, guys. This looks amazing. Yeah, this was a little bit of a longer video. I'm really proud if you were able to get to the end and follow along. These were a bit more difficult than the previous sets of furniture, but this looks amazing. Yeah, I hope you had fun doing this. And again, if there's anything that is not working, please leave a comment or reach out to me. I'm happy to help you. And yeah, see ya.